Well, it's time for another segment of In the Legal Know. And today we're diving into an important topic that could impact your family's financial future. The topic is the spousal trust under a will. So joining us in the studio is Vincent J. Russo from Russo Law Group. Vincent, welcome to the show. Once again, let's start with the basics. What is this? What is a spousal trust under a will?
All right, good question. And this is a wonderful planning strategy that many older married couples are unaware of. So I'm really glad we can bring this to light today. So a spousal trust under a will is it's a legal arrangement that comes into effect when the individual passes away. So it's set up, a trust is set up under a will, and that trust will provide financial support for your surviving spouse and protect the assets for the future beneficiaries, children and grandchildren.
Okay. So why is this more necessary than just, I would assume the spouse gets, the inheritance of what they own together, or just even just a will alone? Why is this different? Why is it needed?
Oh, yeah, good question. And so there are benefits here. Financial security is one, to make sure that the assets that are left for the surviving spouse are properly managed. Perhaps that surviving spouse is incapable at that point to manage their assets properly. So it provides financial security. It also protects the assets from creditor claims and lawsuits. So that's an added bonus.
Okay.
And third, it ensures that the individual's wishes are carried out to make sure that it goes the way it's intended by the spouse who passes away first, to make sure, for example, it goes down the family line to children or grandchildren.
Well, so walk us through it. How does it all work?
Okay. So on a practical level, we got John and Mary. They're married. They're in their 70s. And so each of them would establish a will, and that will would have provisions in it that says that when I pass away, take my assets, put it in a trust for the benefit of my surviving spouse. The trustee can be a child or grandchildren, and the trustee then will manage those assets, spend them for the benefit of the spouse, and then ensure that they get properly distributed later. So the assets are put in the most protective way to give peace of mind.
Does this affect Medicaid eligibility for the surviving spouse?
Yeah, this is the most important reason to set up a spousal trust under a will. It's Medicaid protection. So the Medicaid laws allow, in my example, John, if he passed away first, to put his assets in a trust for the benefit of Mary without impacting Mary's Medicaid eligibility in the future. So the assets in that trust are not counted for Medicaid eligibility. And so it'll help that spouse qualify for long-term care, care at home, assisted living, nursing home, and also protect those assets ultimately for the family. So when you look at the cost of care, average cost of care around the country, $2,000 to $10,000 a month. Who has the resources? So Medicaid is critical, and planning in advance allows one to position themselves to protect that surviving spouse and allow that spouse to access Medicaid.
So what would the effect be on Medicaid if we don't have this special trust?
If you don't have that trust, now you're in a crisis, perhaps. It may be, in my example, that Mary at some later point needs long-term care. She now has these assets in her name. She's not eligible. Right. She's now going to need to do planning, meet with an experienced elder law attorney, and they're going to have to come up with a plan to take those assets out of her name and put it in a protective way. But what happens if Mary is in need of nursing home care? We don't have the time. Now we're thrown into a serious crisis, and some of those assets may have to be spent down, which could have been avoided by planning in advance.
So I know you've talked before with us about the irrevocable and the revocable trusts, or how does this, if somebody has one of those, how does this affect them?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of using trusts for families, but this is irrational, what I'm going to explain right now.
Okay.
Makes no sense. That the concept of the spousal trust under a will protects the assets for the surviving spouse does not work in a revocable trust for the spouse. So if Mary and John set up revocable trusts and they had that spousal trust in their revocable trust, the assets aren't protected for Medicaid. They'll be properly managed. They'll make sure it goes out to the family. But Medicaid will treat it as available. It makes no sense, but that's the law. And this is why it's so confusing to people what they should do. It makes sense to meet with an experienced elder law attorney, plan in advance, and this spousal trust is a wonderful vehicle to protect assets.
So it would have to be outside of the revocable trust, so it's an additional kind of thing that you would set up? Is that how it works?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Life is complicated.
Oh, my goodness.
and we could say, let's simplify it, but then we run the risk of losing our assets.
Okay.
So you have to, pay attention to your situation, and you got to properly plan.
You're giving us all the positives. Is there a downside to this spousal trust?
Yeah, the only downside is you have to put the time and the effort into to make sure the plan is put in place. Make sure the attorney knows what they're doing. So go to an experienced elder law attorney, not someone who's not well-versed in this area. And the trustee is going to have to spend some time managing the assets, so there's some work there. You'll have to have some legal fees.
Okay.
But when you weigh that against losing your assets, if that spouse needs long-term care, it's a no-brainer.
Great. You shed so much light on these topics, and it's a short amount of time that we get to talk about it. So your firm is a wonderful resource for the community. How can people reach out to you and further discuss these complex topics?
Yeah, we're happy to be a resource. So at our website, vjrussolaw.com, we have planning guides. We have an elder law planning guide, a Medicaid planning guide. Download them. They're complimentary. Or you can call us.
Okay. Well, thank you, Vincent, so much for being with us today. Once again, providing us with some important information that we don't even think about, and you're putting it into our heads, not to confuse us, but to challenge us to do some thinking. So thanks for being with us once again.
My pleasure.